Good afternoon. Welcome to today's Onslow Forum. My name is Cindy Edwards. I am the chairman of the Governmental Affairs Committee for the Chamber of Commerce, and on behalf of that committee, I would like to welcome you today and thank you for joining us. The Governmental Affairs Committee works with government agencies on issues that affect our local business community. We monitor legislative issues that impact local businesses and promote partnerships between business, government, military, and education. The Governmental Affairs Committee facilitates these forums to create awareness on topics that are important to our entire community. I'd like to extend a special thanks to our media sponsor, the Jacksonville Daily News, the City of Jacksonville for use of these facilities, and the Jacksonville Media Services for broadcasting this important forum. Our corporate sponsor is Duke Energy Progress. At this time, I would like to welcome their Federal Account Executive and the Chamber's Division Chair of Military Affairs, Mr. Bob Dupree. I got it out. Thank you, boss.
Thank you, Cindy. And on behalf of all the employees at Duke Energy Progress, it's our honor to be part of these forums. We hope to bring you valuable information to the community, and especially in this case, I'd like to thank the folks that are running and being part of the process. It's an honor to have you here and do what you do. So, without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Jason Harris with Welch & Harris, who will be our forum moderator for today.
Thank you, Bob.
Jason, all you.
Thank you, Bob. Good afternoon, everybody. Candidates, thank you. Members in the audience, thank you as well. I appreciate everyone participating in today's Onslow Forum for the position of Onslow County Board of Education. We hope to make this afternoon an informative one and enjoyable as well, so we'll spend a few minutes just talking about sort of the ground rules. First of all, we want to encourage participation. We've had many folks from the audience submit questions on cards, and I'll do my very best to get to as many of those as possible in the time allotted. Additionally, for those folks out in TV land, you are welcome to participate by sending your questions during this forum to G10events. That's G10events at ci.jacksonville.nc.us. Or you can tweet them to @G10events. As I mentioned, we've got a number of questions already submitted by members of the audience, and if there are more, the folks are welcome to hand those up as we proceed tonight. By way of information, this will be, what we'll do this tonight was a series of questions that I will pose to each candidate. They will be general in nature, and the questions submitted by the audience we would ask to be directed sort of generally to the panel rather than to one individual member, since all candidates will have an opportunity to answer every question posed. We've tweaked our format tonight compared to what you may have been used to in the past. There will be no fishbowl round, and as I mentioned earlier, every candidate will have an opportunity to answer every question that I've posed. Are we going to do the rebuttal? Yes. There will also be an opportunity for rebuttal. You should have in front of you 2 cards. You'll have 2 opportunities during this session to ask for an additional 30-second rebuttal time. The way this will work is after I ask a question, I'll designate which candidate will answer the question first. That candidate will have 60 seconds to respond, and then I'll sort of go to the next panel member line by line, or next candidate member line by line, and everyone will have 60 seconds to answer the same question. If at the conclusion of all 4 candidates' responses you would like to rebut, you may show us your card. You get 2 opportunities to do that. You'll get a 30-second rebuttal. At the end of all the questions this evening, we will have summations, and those summations will be given by you. I'm an attorney, so I always think of these as the closing arguments, and those will last for 1 minute in time. This forum is, of course, a forum. It is not a debate, and we'd ask that you address members in the audience that are submitting questions. We want you to address those generally, and want the members of the candidate pool to be sure to address the question posed rather than addressing each other. And I suppose if we get out of line, then my questions will become more like cross-examination than these open ones submitted tonight. We ask you, of course, candidates, to please adhere to the time constraints, the 60 seconds, as I mentioned, or 30 on rebuttal, and you'll have a yellow light that will pop up at about the 30-second time frame, and when you see the red light, please be sure to wrap up what you're saying, finish your sentence, and we will move on. All right. Are there any questions from the candidates about how this will work this afternoon? Okay, very good. Then why don't we get started first by allowing me to ask each candidate to state their name, where they live, presumably in the county, what they do for work currently, and why they are interested in serving on the Board of Education. And Mr. Churchwell, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Jason. My name is Joel Churchwell, and I resided in Onslow County for over 10 years. After retiring from the United States Marine Corps in 2004, I became pastor at a local church here in Onslow County, and I've been an active volunteer in Onslow County for the past 9 years. I have a keen sense of interest for the success of our students because I realize the value of public education and how it has impacted my life and sent me on a wonderful educational journey. So I believe that as we strive to continue to make our public education better and continue to mold it into something positive, I desire to be able to contribute that the students will have at least equal, if not better, opportunities than I had on my educational journey. Because of my professional experiences, because of my active volunteerism in Onslow County, I think I can contribute to the Board of Education, and I can also be a natural fit.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ridge.
My name is Brock Ridge, and I am retired. I was principal of Richlands High School for 26 years and have been in education for a long time. My mission is always to see children do well and to be able to get into the workforce or any other force and be productive. So I think that's very important to anything we do, whether it's ball or whether it's a vocational job, whatever it might be.
Thank you, Mr. Ridge. Ms. Sharp?
I'm Mary Ann Kellum Sharp. I'm a lifelong resident of Onslow County, and the reason that I am running for the Board of Education is basically because I think that the best thing that anybody can have is a good education. And being the grandmother of 2 children, and 2 due in June, I want to make sure that the Onslow County schools are the best that we can have them to be, because with all the changes that we're having today and what is happening to education, we need to have some watchdogs to keep an eye on what's going on in that field right now. Our teachers are important, and they are doing a great job, but we need to let them do the job that they are supposed to be doing. That basically answers the question.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sharp. Let me move on to Mr. Williams.
Hi, I'm Bob Williams. My wife and myself moved here to Onslow County. We live in Jacksonville 4 years ago, actually almost 5 years ago now. And we moved here for the best reason in the world, 4 grandchildren. It's all about the children, whether it's the schools, it's the families, or whatever. And we can't forget that. A little bit about me and my history. I grew up in a little rural community in Michigan, went to a one-room schoolhouse. My last job before I retired the last time was with Los Angeles Unified School District. I was a Deputy Inspector General. I oversaw $19 billion worth of construction projects in the second largest school district. So I went from one of the smallest schools in the nation to one of the largest schools in the nation. I'm very well qualified for the position, and I'm very concerned over the problems that we've seen in the school systems throughout the United States.
Very good. Thank you all. And by way of reminder, before we go on to the next question, if the next candidate in line has forgotten my question, please feel free to remind me, and I'll try to repeat it, okay? I don't profess by any stretch of the imagination to be the Elliot Potter of this crowd. I'll just be the substitute for the day. Fair enough? All right. I'm going to return to Mr. Williams and ask you this question. What do you consider, Mr. Williams, to be the 2 most important objectives for a school board member?
That's fairly simple. It's to take care of our people and to take care of our resources. Our resources being whether it's property or it's the money that we're entrusted by the people to take care of. When I talk about people, I'm talking about students. We have to remember that the primary purpose of a school system is to educate people, educate our little people, our students. We can't forget, though, the parents' involvement. which is crucial to a good education. We can't forget the teachers, the administrators, and all the support people that are in the school system. It takes more than just one or two people to create a good school system, a good environment. It takes an entire community. That's one of the things we need to do, is we need to be able to draw the community together. We need to be able to concentrate on the resources, make sure that we're properly spending our resources, and also that we're getting a good quality education. And that's one of the problems that we're currently having in North Carolina, is the educational process that's being implemented.
Thank you very much. Ms. Sharp, the two most important objectives for a school board member, in your opinion?
We are public education. And I think the most important objective that we have is that we try to realize that it is very important that we look out for our administrative staff who are looking out for our teachers and making sure that we have the best qualified that we can have, because we do need to, when I say public education, we need to draw in the community because we are public. And it's very important that we work together in order to have the best people and educate the children in the way that they need to be educated.
Thank you, Ms. Sharp. Mr. Ridge, the two most important objectives for a school board member, in your opinion, sir?
Well, in my opinion, the four most important mission would be to educate the children, and to educate them to be successful in their jobs and be successful as citizens, and to be responsible. The second one is a safe environment, because a lot of times nowadays, some of the schools not very safe, and not Onslow County, but generally. So I think we need to make sure we have safe environments for our children and their parents.
Thank you, Mr. Ridge. Mr. Churchwell, the two most important objectives for a school board member?
I think, first of all, to help increase the trust of all the stakeholders, we need to strive to make sure we build upon, if it doesn't already exist, and foster a greater degree of transparency. That all stakeholders are able to see what's going on, that there's no hidden agendas, that transparency will help foster a greater degree of communication amongst the stakeholders and the school board. Secondly, I believe it's important that we do all that we can to retain and recruit the best employees for our children, whether that's through professional development, whether that's through offering greater benefit packages, whether that's through mentorship within our new employees. But I believe those two things will help create a greater environment to draw those employees that we want to be a part of our school system, and also the stakeholders that believe in the school board is executing what needs to be done. Transparency is important.
Thank you very much, Mr. Churchwell. I'm going to start this time with you, Ms. Sharp. What do you see happening to public education over the next 10 years that will, and what will public education be like?
That is going to depend on the citizens of this United States of America. Right now, what is happening is not good. I think it is a takeover by the federal government to destroy public education as we have enjoyed it in so many years. If we do not wake up to what is happening to our teachers, what they're doing to our administrators, and the curriculum that is not a curriculum but a standard, if we don't wake up and do something about what is happening, I see us being a socialist school. The government will own us. We will not own the government. And it's very important that we maintain the credibility that we need to in order to have our students educated, and we need to maintain more local control in order to do that. And right now, the federal government is trying to take over, I think.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Ridge, what do you see happening to public education over the next 10 years? And what will public education be like as we move along?
Thank you. I think there's going to be a variety of things different than you see today. You'll see more charter schools, more parochial schools, more homeschool children. I think there'll be a different kind of environment in many cases than just the public school that we know now. But as far as the public schools are concerned, I think there'll be way more technology, there'll be more ways to communicate with parents, and to be more transparent in what we do.
All right, thank you, sir. And Mr. Churchwell?
Could you repeat the question just one more
Absolutely,
time,
yeah.
Jason?
What do you see happening to public education over the next 10 years, and what will public education become like?
Well, I think some of the issues that we'll probably be confronted with within the next 10 years that will change the fabric or the worldview of the public education system is trying to make sure that we keep our teachers motivated to have that desire to want to go into the classroom and continue to instruct our future. With what is going on currently, with the safety issues and the climate in the school system, we've got to make sure that we are fostering a positive environment for our teachers to continue to want to have the desire, that are putting forth the extra effort, that are staying up late at night, making lesson plans, and doing all the extra stuff outside the classroom to reach all those learning dynamics. So with technology coming and the social media coming, it's kind of causing a quandary with keeping schools safe and challenging that we be globally competitive.
Thank you very much. Mr. Williams?
Thank you. Without taking a Orwellian type of attitude in this, if the public doesn't wake up and if the public doesn't get involved in their public education system, you won't recognize the school system 10 years from now. Right now, there's a national effort to take over the entire school system in every district in the country. It's big business. It's companies like Pearson that runs Prentice Hall, and their interest may be profit. It's big companies that are driving, it's big education units, or unions rather, administrative education unions. A group of consolidated people are taking to the next step. You've talked about Common Core, you've heard about it at least. The next one is RESPECT, it's respect, it's an acronym. $5 billion is dedicated to that over the next 3 years in the federal budget to transform the way schools are taught. If we don't change right now and get involved, you won't recognize it 10 years from now.
Thank you very much. I believe we're back to where we started on that question, so my next question will be for Mr. Ridge to start with. Do we need a vocational high school?
Yes, we need an occupational center. That's been one of the goals of the Board of Education probably for the last 8 years. In the sense that it is difficult for a child who lives in Swansboro to get a course like auto mechanics in Southwest. It's difficult for another child who is interested in home ec to find one maybe in Swansboro. So we need a center, a place where they can go for the vocational training and then return back to their, or I think they should return back to their regular school for their other courses.
Thank you, Mr. Ridge. Mr. Churchwell, do we need a vocational high school here in Onslow County?
Yes, sir, I think we do, because I think it will help those students who perhaps found themselves like me when I was in high school. I enrolled in a graphic printing course, and that was the most rewarding experience that I had while I was in high school. Thankfully, I didn't have to revert back to that or use that skill that I learned in high school, but thank God I did learn that skill in high school. So I think it's very beneficial that we offer at least a plethora of skills for the population here in Onslow County.
Very well, thank you, sir. Mr. Williams, vocational school here in Onslow County?
I'm not sure that we need a vocational school. I know that we need to teach vocational subjects. Whether or not that could be integrated into the current system is something I'd have to study in more detail before I can make a conclusion on that. I do see a study, or I do see rather a trend in what's happening. The graduation rates are going up a little bit, but they're not going up as much as we'd hope they are. The educational policies that we have that we're currently pushing down from a national level down to state level, down to the local level, and making the policies that we've got probably is going to go against what we would like to do in the long run. All students don't learn at the same rate. Some students are going to be more adept to taking vocational schools. Not everybody's going to be wanting to go to colleges. So you need to be able to plan a school process that will take into account the different varieties of types of students that we have.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Sharp, vocational school in Onslow County?
Absolutely. I have been working to get an educational tech school in Onslow County probably for 30 years, because I think that a lot of students will not go to college, and some of them, even if they do, it's very difficult to find a good, decent job. And I want our Onslow County people, our children, to stay in Onslow County. And the only way that we can ensure that is if we had a vocational tech school. I think that it would help bring in more businesses to our area. And I have actually had someone offer me a large parcel of property for this, and I certainly hope that that comes through, because we do need it. As I say, all kids are not going to college. We need to take care of those that aren't and make sure that they can stay in Onslow County and raise those grandchildren and not go up north or wherever, but stay here where they can be productive citizens and raise a family.
Rebuttal from Mr. Williams, 30 seconds. Yes, sir.
We already have a vocational school here of sorts. It's called the community college, and the community college could well be suited to do training either by bringing some of the high school students to the community college and creating classes for that. So I don't know that we need specifically a school for that or a facility for that if you use a community college and their facilities.
Thank you. This is where it gets exciting. Ms. Sharp with her rebuttal.
I don't think that would be a good idea, simply because the college does not have any room to expand. We have looked into that before. It would not work for us because of the way the college is set up and the way our high schools are set up. We need to have our own. College is college and tech school is tech school. And if it's a tech school, our 7 high schools would be in charge of what is going on, and it would not come under a college head. And I think there's some laws and rules and regulations where that is concerned anyway.
Very well. Anyone care to use another rebuttal? All right. I thank you all. I think we're back now to Mr. Churchwell. You're up to bat. Probably the most popular question from the audience tonight deals with Common Core, which some have described as the federal takeover of education, federal intrusion into education, and I think in essence the questions basically stem down to what is your position concerning Common Core and the federal government's involvement with our Onslow County students' education. So Mr. Churchwell, for you.
Based on the research that I've conducted thus far, it appears that, the federal government has been involved in the public school system since 1960 to some degree. Certainly they're expanding their involvement, and that certainly raises a concern. Common Core, is it the ideal fit for our educational system? I think the verdict is still out on that. Are we providing the necessary training so our teachers can be effective in the classroom? I can't answer that question because I'm not in the classroom. But the hows and the whats of it, I think that we need to be concerned that we don't allow the federal government to have such a large footprint in our public school system. But I think that we need to explore every opportunity that's going to provide a quality education for our children.
Mr. Williams, Common Core.
As somebody said, our students aren't common. I'm against Common Core. I'm against the implementation of Common Core in the state of North Carolina and every other state in the union. Common Core is simply one step in the national takeover of the educational process. There's many, many steps. It's been going on for many, many years. Race to the Top started it out. We've had several of these programs over the many, many years. You could count them on maybe a couple of hands. Nothing, throwing more dollars at that process and having a national program is going to solve the local education problems that we have here. Education needs to start at local, it needs to have community involvement, it needs to have a good board of education that can provide out there the policies, the good administrators in the school district that will carry out those policies and do it at the local level. We don't need national telling us how to teach our children.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Ms. Sharp, Common Core in Onslow County.
Common Core is an attempt by the federal government, in my opinion, to take over the education of our children in this nation. And we all know that whenever the people that control energy, health care, and public education are going to control us as a whole. That's why I'm against Common Core at this point in time, and why I think that we do not need to implement it because of the way it was started in Washington, D.C. I think some of the people that met in that room that day might have had some good thoughts behind them, but apparently some other people got a hold of what they were attempting to do, just like some of the other fix-all things that we have had come our way over the last 20 years. We do not need to change and let the federal government run our education of our children. We need local control. We need to let the parents and the people in our community have more say-so, whether it be the calendar or whatever, because no two counties and even our state are the same. And that's why we need more local control, and the people in Washington and Raleigh need to sit up and take notice. It's our kids at our school, and we think that we need to be the ones to be educating them in North Carolina.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ridge, your position on Common Core vis-a-vis Onslow County?
I would prefer us not to have Common Core for a lot of reasons. One is it's controversial. Regardless, any way you go about it, you end up with a group who's opposed to it. Second of all, it does have that federal implication, which makes it more federal, and we don't need that. And once you start that, you can end up with the federal government then taking the grades of the kids and giving those to other folks. I don't think it's the best model we've ever had.
All right, thank you. I believe we are now back to Mr. Williams unless there are any rebuttal cards. Not at this point. All right, let's change topics a little bit and move away from federalism and talk about school uniform policy. Should we have one in Onslow County, Mr. Williams?
I spent 20 years practically in the Air Force uniform. Uniforms are good. However, I don't know that you need them in the school system. I've heard this argument going on, and I saw it when I was in the school district in Los Angeles, talking about different school uniforms. I know some of the parochial schools have had them for years. When I went to high school in a small town in Michigan, the little parochial school down the road there, they all wore uniforms at that time. So it's something that's been going on for years. A lot of other countries have it. I don't know that it increases the education by putting a uniform on somebody. I don't know that taking away the individualism of an individual by having their own clothes or their own type of clothing increases the education process. What increases the education process is a good concerned community, good teachers, and a good administrative system.
Thank you. Ms. Sharp, school uniforms.
What do I think about uniforms?
Yes, ma'am.
I think that uniforms can be a good thing. I have talked to a lot of the students and a lot of parents throughout the years, and it has a lot of good things about it. I have found that most of them seem to think that they have higher grade scores. I know the discipline seems to be better, and it certainly saves on money when you're going out and buying designer jeans or whatever. And they also, just as we do in our public schools now, we have a day that they can wear their jeans and their old baggy clothes or whatever. I forgot what they call that day. It's kind of like a field day or whatever.
Dress down day.
It's dress down? Well, that's about what it is, some of it. Dress or whatever. And if we had uniforms, I think that kids would not have to have any peer pressure as to does my shoes look better than his or hers or whatever, and we wouldn't have to worry about the cost. There would be a set fee.
Thank you, Ms. Sharp. Mr. Ridge?
At first, I was very much in favor of uniforms. I served as a principal in Halifax County a couple years ago, in which they had uniforms. It was the most disastrous thing those kids could do. They wanted to do anything to get out of them. They wanted a day off. It did not enhance education. It did create some tension between administrators and themselves. It was not good. It doesn't mean it doesn't work somewhere else. It did not work there.
Thank you, Mr. Ridge. Mr. Churchwell, uniforms in school.
I was an advocate for uniforms in school, but based on some discussions I've had with teachers and parents, and even my own daughter, who sends my grandson to a school where they wear uniforms. Initially, she was elated because it saved her quite a bit of money. But however, my grandson likes his individuality. And I think that's important. As Mr. Williams said, I think it's important that we allow our children to display some of their individuality at that formative age. So I'm in opposition for school uniforms.
Thank you. All right, I believe it's your turn first on this next question, Ms. Sharp. We're going to get right to it. These are some certainly hotly charged questions tonight. What should the role, I'm going to paraphrase this question from the audience, what should the role of our schools be with respect, if any, to teaching from the Bible or teaching about biblical foundation?
Now, repeat that a little bit louder. I'll
Sure,
make
yeah,
I got
I'm
it
sorry,
right.
let me get this microphone a little bit closer. What should the school's role, if any, be with respect to teaching about the Bible or biblical foundation?
In other words, should it be allowed?
Correct.
Only, I really think that religion should not be in schools per se, but I really am a Christian, and I believe that the students need to have some teaching about that as a history or whatever. It is a history. But sometimes you get into a real big problem when you start opening up politics and religion. So I'm leery to go too far in that. I really think that they need to have some exposure to it, but it should not be taught as a subject necessarily.
Mr. Ridge, teaching in Onslow County from or about the Bible?
Well, right now it's legal to teach the Bible as literature, not as religion, but as literature, and that can be done anywhere. So I have no objection. In fact, I'd be in favor of us stressing some things in the Bible, as long as it's not going to conflict with whatever the federal government would do, and it would not if you stick with it being literature. The other thing, we have Fellowship of Christian Athletes in almost every school. So it's not a non-deal with Christians, I would hope.
Thank you, Mr. Ridge. Mr. Churchwell, the Association of the Bible in our Onslow County schools, sir.
Well, I have to kind of agree with Mr. Ridge. The Bible is literature, but there are some basic principles within the Bible that I think will help mold the fabric of our society. Surround yourself with wise counsel. Get understanding. So those kind of principles, to whom much is given, much is required. So those kind of principles help shape and mold our behavior. So I think from that perspective, you can enforce those kind of concepts and not actually get all the way into the deep theological teachings of the Bible.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, tell us about the Bible in our schools here in Onslow County.
I would not be opposed to having an elective class in the schools to teach on the Bible or to teach about the Bible. One of the problems I think we've had in this country in the long run is this protracted fight that we've had with the separation of church and state. A lot of our principles of the people that have come here come with religious beliefs. I believe everybody ought to have their own religious beliefs, but I don't think we ought to be standing out and telling people that just because it's a Bible or because it's another religious document, that it shouldn't be in the schools. Schools should be about learning. It should be about learning about cultures, different cultures. It should be about a bunch of different things. So I would see no problem with having a class on religion where the Bible was a subject of discussion.
All right, it's now my turn to pick on Mr. Ridge. We talked earlier about vocational schools in Onslow County, or the possibility of having them. What level of emphasis should arts and music play in our county schools?
Oh, my goodness gracious, arts and music is very important to any society. It certainly is to education. It's a creative part of us. It deals with bringing us together. And I think in Onslow County, cultural arts of different kinds are always very important. We just had a gentleman just die who started the band program at Jacksonville High School. And so I think music, every school has bands and every school has art. It's important. I think it's very important.
Thank you, Mr. Churchwell. The role of arts and music in our schools.
I think it's very valuable that we have those opportunities for students to participate in art and music as a form of self-expression, because I believe that that gives them an opportunity to tap into the creative nature of themselves. And along those lines, you know, arts and music in the way of drama can be beneficial in curtailing conflict resolution. They can begin to discuss and begin to create plays on how to de-escalate and how to deal with conflict through the form of art and drama.
Mr. Williams.
Thank you. I'm very much in favor of it. As some people know in this room and out there in the public, I'm a photographer. I've been a photographer all my life, but I've been a professional photographer for the last 4.5 years after I retired as a criminal investigator. I believe it's very important that you have the arts in schools. I think it's a form of expression. Not all of us express ourselves in the same way. Some of us express ourselves in the form of arts. Others are more mathematicians. Others people are into science. I think it makes a well-rounded individual if you're able to explore or tap into all of those different arenas.
Thank you. Ms. Sharp, before I get to you, I'll promise you, if you'll answer this question, that I won't sing tonight, okay? Your position on arts and music in our schools.
I think it's a very good thing, because we have a lot of students that don't know how to express themselves, and they just don't know how to fit in. And I have seen students that when they would get into the music classes and some of the other art classes, they would just bloom. And I just think it's a necessity for our students today to have that in the school.
All right, thank you very much. Any rebuttal on this question before I move to the next one? All right, I believe it's your turn, Mr. Churchwell. Forgive me, in law school, they make you stand up when the teacher calls on you, so I'm still getting used to the fact that everybody's still seated at the moment. I'm going to weave a couple of questions together that were pre-submitted, and several from our audience. And again, I thank the members of the audience and those in TV land for submitting a number of questions. They've really helped provoke conversation tonight. Mr. Churchwell, what do you see as the board's roles and responsibilities? And as one member of the audience asked, what do you see as the board member's job description? And are you physically able to do, physically and mentally prepared to handle those duties?
Yes, I'm physically and mentally prepared to handle those duties, and the board's description and responsibilities are to make sure that the school administrative staffs are carrying out the wishes of the stakeholders, and to provide oversight and to communicate with stakeholders of the needs of the school system to better educate our students. So although the responsibilities are many, the primary focus, I believe, for the board is to make sure that the school system itself is running efficiently, staying within its budget constraints, and providing the best quality of education for our students.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, the board members' roles and responsibilities, how you see the job description of a board member, and are you physically and mentally prepared to handle those responsibilities and duties?
There have been some people that have questioned my sanity for running for school board. However, I feel that I am more than capable and healthy enough to do the job. I would see our responsibility as a oversight position. It's a policy-making board. The administrator, the superintendent, has a responsibility for administering everything, the day-to-day operations, but it's up to the policies that the board institutes and creates that makes and sets the tone at the top. It's a very important job, because if the policies aren't set correctly, the tone at the top doesn't get set down to the bottom. And it's very important that everyone in the school district understand what the policies are. They have to be clearly enunciated, and they need to be changed from time to time. I think we ought to be going back and looking at them and making sure that they're current and that they're relevant.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Sharp, the board's roles and responsibilities, the job description, and are you physically and mentally prepared for those responsibilities?
The job description of a school board member basically is to set policy and to oversee the running of the administrative staff. The job that we have that is the biggest job that I have just found out after all the years I've been on the board is hiring the superintendent. And hiring the superintendent and hiring the attorney are the only two things that the board hires. Others, we have staff that maintains that. We do oversee those that are hired and sign off on them. But basically, we are the go-between for the students. We are supposed to be overseeing what is happening where our students are concerned. We are supposed to be the mediator, and we're supposed to kind of be like the bridge between the students and the parents and the administrators to try to make sure that parents and students, citizens, administrators, and everybody is on the same playing field, and that is to do what we're supposed to be doing, educating our children.
Thank you, Ms. Sharp. Thank you very much. Mr. Ridge, the board's roles and responsibility, the job description in your mind, and are you physically and mentally prepared for the duties?
Well, the policy, of course, is the first part of it. Probably the oldest person here in the group, but I go to every school every year at least once to make sure of what's going on at the school and to look, going to the cultural events, going to talk to teachers, going to talk to principals. So even though I got some age on me, I think that's very important that we do that. If nothing else, it shows that we support what they're doing.
Thank you, Mr. Ridge. All right, I believe I'm back to Mr. Williams at this point. If I'm getting out of order, someone kick me in hard, preferably. That could be an invitation to some of these folks back here.
Brother.
No, I'm back to Williams. So I started with
Yeah,
I started with Churchwell, so we're back to Williams. Okay. All right, Mr. Williams, how will you engage the community to improve our public schools in the district? And do you think that as part of that responsibility that there needs to be or ought to be more transparency?
That goes without saying. Transparency is all important. It doesn't matter what organization you have. It's especially important in the schools. There is no bigger responsibility that a school district has than taking care of the children of the parents of this community. It's very important that the students get a good education, but it's equally important that the parents have a good understanding of what education they're getting, how it's being administered, what the thought processes are, and where the money is being spent. Transparency in a financial organization. I'm a fraud investigator by trade. I did it for about 30 years. The first thing you need to do when you go into a new organization is you need to take a quick look at it. You need to find out whether or not their books are open. If they're not open, if they're not transparent, that sets the tone at the top, as I was talking about a little bit earlier. Transparency is all important. You can't do without it.
Thank you. Ms. Sharp, what would you do as a board member to engage the community and promote transparency?
Well, I thought to get us on television, even though we're not live, I think we're doing a good job because our curtains and everything is more colorful. But we are trying to be more transparent. I think it's important. If it's our kids and the people, the children, the parents need to know what's going on, and if it's a public school and it's a community working together, then we don't need to have any secrets. We need to be able to tell it like it is and let everybody know up front. Or otherwise, we don't need to be asking for money or anything else unless we have a good reason behind it and that we can make sure that we get the word out, who we are and what we're about and what we're for.
All right, Mr. Ridge.
Well, I would bring TV up first. I think Mr. Jeff Brown got that in place, so that gives a chance for everybody throughout the county to see what's going on in the board meetings. We do have special shows that shows what some of the children are doing. We are on TV, and we do try to communicate with each school, communicating with their parents as to what they're doing within their schools and what the policies are. And we have a policy book that goes throughout the whole county.
Thank you, Mr. Ridge. Mr. Churchwell, engaging the community and transparency in our school board?
I believe that we need to continue to foster a climate that promotes communication. I believe transparency is not just an end goal, but it should be a precursor, something that we establish at the very beginning of all our conversations so we can help foster a level of trust between all the stakeholders. The more we communicate and the more we understand, I believe that the responses from all our stakeholders will be a little differently. Because although we all communicate, we don't always connect. So I believe that as we continue to create those forums and those avenues that will allow all that we do to be displayed to the public, it will help foster a greater climate of cooperation.
Thank you. All right, I now get to return and pick on Ms. Sharp again. I'm going to say two words and put it in your court for a minute. Teacher salaries.
They need to get paid for the job they do, and how they can stay in that profession with what they're getting paid is, you would have to be passionate about education. I think that teachers need to be paid more, period.
Thank you, Ms. Sharp. Mr. Ridge.
The very last time I read the situation, where some of the lowest paid teachers in the nation are in the state of North Carolina. Teachers should be valued. If you want children to be successful, you want to hire a good teacher that would be able to communicate and have good relationships with children and with parents. I don't know how you can pay poor salaries and expect to have the best results. I think you really need to pay your teachers more than we do. Pay our teachers more than we do. I feel very strongly about that one.
Mr. Churchwell, teacher salaries.
Teacher salaries, I agree with what has been said thus far, that teacher salaries need to be raised, because when you look at the amount of effort that teachers are putting in the construction and developing lesson plans, that they reach all the learning dynamics of all the students, the efforts that they're placing perhaps in buying materials to go in the classroom for lack of funding, I think we need to compensate our teachers adequately for the efforts that they're putting forward.
And Mr. Williams?
I think not only teacher salaries, I think all salaries need to be increased. If you have a school district where the employees are adequately paid, you're going to have happy employees. Now, money doesn't buy happiness every time, but it certainly goes a long way in promoting harmony within the school district. That being said, it's difficult for me to answer whether or not our teachers need more salaries, because the numbers on salaries of teachers or any other employees in the school district is non-existent. You can't get access to it unless you're in the system. Those figures and numbers of how much the teachers are being paid in Onslow County are not there. We see large numbers for budgets, but we don't see individuals. So we don't have a clue, if you're out there in the general public, of what a particular teacher is. We can look at the salary states that they have at the state level and show what the approximations is, but I don't have any idea of what the salaries are actually being paid here.
All right, and I'll move along to Mr. Ridge. Can you comment on the role of the nurses in our schools? Do we have enough of them? And I suppose since we address teacher salaries, we ought to address school nurse salaries as well.
I think today we have way more nurses than we did 5 years ago. I think every school has access to a nurse. They're critical because we have children who have all kinds of issues. I can think of one time when we had children come to school with lice in their head. It takes somebody to determine what that is and how you can get rid of it. So I think nurses, well, I don't know how you could do without some kind of nurse in every school, because you've got children, and they're going to have issues.
Mr. Churchwell, school nurses.
I think it's important that we have school nurses, because we certainly wouldn't want laypersons to be trying to diagnose. We certainly wouldn't want laypersons to be trying to administer certain types of medications if that calls for it. So I think it's critical that we do have nurses in all the schools.
Mr. William, comment on school nurses in our schools. Do we have enough of them? I think was the general gist of the question.
I don't know if we have enough of them or not. I would certainly advocate that we have a school nurse in every school. I think it's just common sense that we would do that. It's probably one of the most important things. The problem with putting additional staff in every school, it comes to the same staffing problem that you have anywhere else in government. How are you going to pay for it? And that's the biggest clue. People don't generally have a problem with staffing, but it's with the paying. It's income tax, it's sales tax. You have to have a mechanism in order to provide for the money coming in if you're going to hire additional people. So if we don't have nurses in every school at this point, that's an issue that's going to have to be addressed, and the public has to understand that as well. If you want nurses in your school and if you don't have them, it's going to come with additional costs.
Thank you, Ms. Sharp. School nurses and their roles in our schools.
I think we should have school nurses, and right now, we do not have as many school nurses as I think we need. With the number of schools and the number of students that we have, we certainly don't want an issue to come up. We've actually had a student, I think, a few years ago that actually died in one of our schools. You don't have time sometimes when these things come up to get a child to the hospital. And if you do, it may take too long for them to be seen. Yes, we need school nurses, and we need more than what we have now. We've been cut in that department recently. Lack of funds, you know.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, while we're on the topic of health, Mr. Churchwell, if you can address the perceived problem with youth obesity in our schools and what our Board of Education ought to do about that.
Certainly, we need to look at the lunches that are being served, the nutritional value associated to what the students are being offered in the cafeteria. Certainly, we need to look at the opportunities for them to engage in physical activities to help them develop some life skills that will allow them to understand the importance of physical activities as it relates to exercise. We need to continue to try to educate them on making proper food choices. We need to educate them on how it becomes important for them to start taking care of their body now while they're young, because it'll definitely pay off as they grow older. So I think education, monitoring what is being served within our cafeteria systems throughout the school system.
Thank you very much. Mr. Williams, the perceived problem with youth obesity and how our schools can deal with that.
I don't think it's a perceived problem. I think it's an actual problem. And I think the schools, through a system of proper nutrition in the cafeterias, proper educational process, but it has to go beyond that. The students are in the school for a set period of time every day. Then they go back to the house. And if you teach them properly within the school system, and they go back to the house, and the households don't have proper nutritional programs, the parents aren't teaching them properly, or the parents aren't providing good examples, you're going to be counterproductive in anything you do in the school, because the parents are going to have much more effect over the students than what a nutritional program. You can learn good nutrition, but it's a lifelong goal, or it's a lifelong process to be able to maintain that. And the families have to get involved. If you're going to have a nutrition program, it has to push out into the community as well.
Ms. Sharp.
I believe that healthy students that eat properly learn better. Naturally, they feel better, and they certainly look better, because I don't think any of us want to be fat on purpose. It's very important that our parents are taught sometimes nutrition, along with maybe we need to offer courses that will help the parents. I know that all families cannot go out and buy healthy food for their students. I know that some of them just don't have the food in the home that they need to be serving their students. That is why the schools are now trying so hard to feed them breakfast and lunch and snacks that are going to help them to be more productive students and to be healthy students, and hopefully they'll pick up on some of it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ridge, obesity in our students in Onslow County.
Well, obesity anywhere is a very serious issue. I think, first of all, we can make sure what we serve in the cafeteria is will not cause more obesity. I think we should stress in educational values the importance of the right things to eat and the problems with obesity. And we need to have exercise, lots of food.
You all have got me a little bit, feeling a little bit guilty about that big barbecue lunch today. All right, I believe we're on to Mr. Williams at this point. Can you address for us, Mr. Williams, the involvement of SROs, or school resource officers, in our schools, and what, how, or if at all, should they be outfitted with what types of levels of force? In other words, are we going to allow them to carry stun guns, firearms, batons? What types of protective measures should they be allowed to carry, if any, in the school?
We don't have schools here in Onslow County that are as high risk as the ones that I came from in Los Angeles. I can speak from experience in the Los Angeles school system in a major metropolitan area where you have a high influx of gangs, you have shootings outside the schools, you have shootings on the schools, and you have gang violence within the school systems. A patrol officer or an SRO needs to be properly outfitted. He needs to have the proper gear to be able to respond to the force level that is presented. That might mean having weapons. It might mean simply having a stun gun, as the incident that we had here a week or two ago. It could be a number of things. Officers need to be able to protect themselves in order to protect the public or to protect the other students. I have no problem with officers being armed, and arming comes with training, so that all goes into hand in glove. You can't just provide, just like you wouldn't want to give an ordinary citizen a gun and just tell them to go.
All right, Ms. Sharp, SROs.
I think they should be armed. After all, they are law enforcement officers, and they sometimes have to protect themselves. And if a student that is getting out of control realizes that the officer does have a gun or stun gun or whatever, it might help them to control themselves better. I really never thought I'd see the day in Onslow County that we had to have an SRO officer in our schools. Unfortunately, times have changed, and I think that officers need to protect themselves, and we don't have them, supposedly, in our schools unless they have had the proper training.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ridge, if you can address the use of SROs and what level of force they should present.
Well, but they definitely should be in our middle schools and our high schools, as far as those kinds of folks. They should be very visible. That's one of the main things, is for the children to be aware they're there and that they see what's going on within the school and what kinds of things are coming into the community. Because quite often you can prevent better than you can if you don't have a gun and you will shoot somebody because they've already done it. I think we need SRO officers. They are trained. They report back to the school and sometimes even to the sheriff. But I think in this day and time, to where it's not just a student within the school, but in some time it's protecting the students from somebody on the outside who's coming in.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ridge. Mr. Churchwell, SROs in Onslow County schools and what levels of force that they should present.
I agree that, the levels of force that the SROs are able to utilize should be in accordance with the training that they have received. We know that violence is prevalent in the society that we're living in, and unfortunately violence is made its way into the public school system where it disrupts the climate of education. Whatever levels of prevention that we can incorporate to minimize or be at least equal to the intrusion, I think it's important because we realize oftentimes that violence is a progressive behavior that ultimately displays itself in some aspect. So along with proper training with our SROs, I think there needs to be additional assessment awareness, perhaps classes for everybody, so that we can all be a participant in curtailing the violence that's prevalent in our public school systems.
Thank you, Mr. Churchwell. Ms. Sharp, I believe it's your turn. Year-round schools, should we have them in Onslow County? Should it be all of the schools, some of the schools, none of the schools, or should perhaps a school experiment with it?
What was the last thing of school what?
Or perhaps should one school, for instance, experiment with the idea of year-round school?
We do have a year-round school currently. I think it's our first test school here. Possibly year-round school would be good if everybody wanted to have that, but again, I think we need to have more local control where that is concerned. I think that education is so important that I would love to go to school the year round. However, some of the other people in Onslow County might not see it that way. It would probably be money saving in some ways, but in other ways not. We have looked at that angle and talked about that over the years, and I'm not sure we need to have them all at one time go year-round. Kind of go along and see what's working for us and what the community and the citizens and the public thinks about it. That is what it's all about, public education, public participation with our citizens being involved.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ridge, year-round schools?
I would not be in favor of all year-round schools. I will say to you, I worked with the State Department for 10 years, and one of the issues that we had during that entire time was, what do you do with that month or two in summer where students are not in school and they forget the kinds of things they need to know when they return to school? So there has to be remediation. On the other hand, that's not the only thing we should test, because we have a lot of things in public education that we have not really tested. For example, we have magnet schools. How do they compare with other schools? We have one primary school. What's the results of that as compared to other things? We need to gather data on any program that we have to see what the results are, and then go from there.
We're doing that now.
All right, and Mr. Churchwell, year-round schools, your thoughts, some, all, none?
I'm not in favor of all, but I think there should be an option. There should be some that are available, depending on the number and depending on what the budget can support, but I think that option should be available for parents that want their students to be, or their child to be in a year-round school. So I'm in favor of at least having that option available.
All right, Mr. Williams.
Thank you. I really haven't studied the options. In Los Angeles, we had several year-round schools, but primarily the year-round schools were created as a budget issue, because it was more economic to use one facility to house many, many students on off cycles and rotate them in on different areas, so that when you had some students in class, others were off, the facilities are there. It doesn't make good sense to build a house and live in it for 9 months of the year, and most of us don't do that unless you happen to have a vacation house. But the majority of us live in our house 12 months out of a year. Our facilities are vacant for 3 months out of the year. You're still paying for those facilities. They still deteriorate, they still depreciate at the same rate as if you have somebody in there as you don't. So to utilize the facilities and as an alternative to building new schools, that should be an alternative that we should be looking at.
Thank you very much. I believe we're back to Mr., we've got a
I
rebuttal from
agree.
Ms. Sharp.
It might take, it might be helpful where our money for raising, for building new schools, it could take away the need for additional schools at some point in time in some particular areas.
I had a construction of schools question that I can't find, but I'm going to come back to it. That's the preview. In the meantime, a question from the audience. Should a foreign language be required or an elective in public schools? And what, sort of a dovetail on that is, what foreign languages should we offer to our students? I believe we're to Mr. Ridge, if I recall.
Well, I'm old school. I think it should be Latin. Because law and medicine is all based on that kind of language. And I think that every school should have the opportunity of not only Latin, but Chinese or Spanish, but some kind of foreign language that they learn. but my preference would be Latin.
Thank you, Mr. Ridge. Mr. Churchwell?
I think it should be offered, and my preference would be Spanish. But I believe that, it would be beneficial for the overall character building of the student if they were afforded the opportunity to take a foreign language. May become instrumental in whatever community. If they decide to leave from Onslow County and reside in another community, at least will give them some tools to be able to foster some communication styles or avenues of communication with other populations within that particular city.
Thank you, Mr. Churchwell. Mr. Williams, foreign languages.
I believe in them. I think we ought to start with English, because that seems to be the first foreign language that we're having. When I went to school, I took a year of German, and I took 2 years of Latin because I wanted to become a physician. Latin was a dead language then. It still is a dead language, and it will be a dead language years from now, and it's not as relied upon in the medical industry as it used to be. There are still many things that they have there, but I don't think Latin's taught very much in there. Spanish, probably because of the demographics that the United States is turning for, would be a good language. But when you look at world politics, you could pick a couple of others from Euro-Asians, or you could pick one from Chinese. And there's a couple different dialects that you could go with that would be very helpful to students in the future if we are truly going towards a global economy.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Sharp, for your position on foreign languages, required, elective, and tell us about which foreign languages you have in mind.
Well, with all the people that we have moving to our particular area, it appears it needs to be Spanish. You can't pick up a phone or anything else that you don't get more Spanish than anything else. And I think that we need to know what these people are saying about us sometimes, because I go places and I'm sure people are saying things about me in Spanish that I would love to know what they're saying. Now, my children are both fluent in Spanish and French, and I think that a foreign language should be optional. But I, too, think that we need to stress English and that they should learn it, and that if you live in America and you live in Onslow County, English, when you get it perfect, then we might look at some foreign languages.
Very well. All right, this will be our final question for the evening, and you know what it's going to be about, right? This person asks, where an elementary school is built and where there's sewer, there's growth in Onslow County. How involved should the school board members be in evaluating how the system affects growth instead of reacting to growth? Mr. Churchwell, the question starts with you.
How involved should the school system be with the system of growth? If a new school is built and there's sewer,
I think that's the gist.
Infrastructure.
I think that's the gist of the question,
okay,
correct?
Okay. I don't know if the school system wants to get involved in trying to mandate where developers build and how developers build and how much development is being built around a particular school. I think the school system should look at the needs first and address the needs, and then obligate the monies in that type of construction instead of building construction hoping that developers will build around that school. It's kind of a tricky situation, but I just believe that we should already have a plan in place that will help us deal with wherever the population growth in the particular area that we anticipate population growth taking place, instead of hoping that developers will accommodate a school that we build. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Williams.
Thank you. Well, first of all, you should never build a school where you don't need it. Where school construction is needed is in the areas that are being developed. The problem that we're having in this county, and I've addressed in several instances in the past, is that there is no coordination between the school district, the county, or the cities with regards to developers and the building out of this. We've got several development areas out in the Sneads Ferry area, out in Richlands area, in the city of Jacksonville. All of those are high-growth areas right now, or over the last few years. We're going to be spending many, many years trying to catch up with the school systems, because as you fill those houses with students, you're going to have an overpopulation in the schools in particular areas. You're going to have a need to build new schools in those particular areas. But there needs to be a coordination between the developers, the county, the planners, the school district and all of that. And there are some rules that are set out there that's supposed to happen. I just don't believe it is happening.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Ms. Sharp?
Well, redistricting is a bad word in Onslow County, and if you need to move students from one school to another because you have empty seats in some schools, parents don't like that. I have known them to actually put up their homes for sale. When developers come in with a plan, we should have smart planning. I was told several years ago when I went and spoke to the county commissioners that we have smart planning, but I haven't seen it in effect, because when builders go down with their plans for subdivision, a lot of times they are real anxious to give us a piece of property for an elementary school or middle school. But you know what? We need more than just a elementary school or middle school. Those kids grow up, they need a high school, and that costs the county money to bus them out of that particular area to another school, and a lot of times you can't find a piece of property where you need it. So yes, we need to be involved more, and the county commissioners need to get involved more with what we're allowing to come into the county and how it's done. Smart
Thank you,
planning is
Sean.
the action, is the
Thank
word
you.
there.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ridge?
Well, part of that is really done, we rely on the NC State for a lot of the data that we have on the growth in this county and other agencies too, to try to predict where the growth was going to be and where we need to build the schools. But we need to be aware, we need to be very sensitive to the fact that we don't build a school until we make sure that that is going to be an area which is going to be heavily populated and needs one. But it's not just us, is my point. We are relying on other agencies to help us with determining that.
I thank you all very much for responding to a host of questions, many of which were submitted by our audience members. And again, I appreciate all of your responses. Now it's the time to give what I'll call your closing argument. Everyone will get 1 minute, and we are going to start off with Ms. Sharp for the closing arguments. And again, you'll get 1 minute. Ms. Sharp?
Okay. I thank you for the opportunity to come and speak to the people of Onslow County. I think that you know that I have been on the board a long time, and probably a lot of you think I've been on there too long. But I can assure you I'm not too old to keep fighting, and our children are important. The education of our children is important, and if you want someone who's willing to stand up and be counted, because I think our kids are worth fighting for, then I would appreciate your vote in May.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ridge?
I appreciate your vote too, if you'll give me one. Well, the first thing, of course, is the soul of whatever we do is for the children. So it's very important that we take care of our children and we teach them well, so that they can grow to be good people, to have good character, and to respect other folks and not just be a bully or out in some other way. So I've been on the Board of Education for quite a while, but my heart is in one thing, and that is in seeing children grow into adults who are productive and respectful of others. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ridge. Mr. Churchwell?
Certainly, I would solicit your vote. I believe that my sense of fairness, and as I indicated earlier, my keen interest in the success of our students, and with my professional experiences and with my position of being a local pastor and having been a part of Onslow County for the last 10 years, and of those 10 years, several of those years being active in volunteerism, has given me a sense of insight that some of the skill sets that I can bring to the Board of Education will be a good natural fit. So again, I thank you for this opportunity, and again, I solicit your vote.
And I thank you as well. Mr. Williams, you've got the last word.
Well, thank you. Something I don't normally get. I appreciate the opportunity to come here before the community as well and express my desire to not only be a board member, but to express that I'll do the best job I can for you. I'm uniquely qualified for the position. I worked for 9.5 years for a school board in Los Angeles, second largest school district in the nation. We built $19 billion worth of schools. We're currently undertaking a 10-year program to build $150 million worth of new schools here in the county. I can uniquely provide assistance in that process because I've been through it. I know the process. I know how to do it. I'm 30 years as a fraud investigator. I know how to effect transparency. I know how to create policy that will have lasting transparency. I would appreciate your vote as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'll now turn it back over to our Chamber President, Lorette.
Thank you very much. First off, I want to thank our candidates, Mr. Churchwell, Mr. Ridge, Mrs. Sharp, and Mr. Williams. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for your willingness to serve. The Chamber of Commerce is able to put on events like this because of our partnerships and our members, and I wish you'd allow me to please take the time to thank those that made this event possible. Our corporate sponsor, Duke Energy Progress, our media sponsor, the Daily News, and our partners, the City of Jacksonville and the City of Jacksonville Media Services. Thank you to Cindy Edwards, owner of By His Design and the chair of the Chamber's Governmental Affairs Committee. Our moderator, first-timer, did a very nice job, and Chamber Board member Jason Harris, an attorney at law at Welch and Harris. And a special thank you to our Forum Onslow coordinator, the Chamber's Operations Director, Janet Bowen, our timekeeper, membership manager Christina Fernandez, and to the Chamber staff members, Special Events Manager Elena Sosa and Teresa Carter, the Onslow County Tourism Director, for their assistance with today's events. Now, I hope you can join us for our next Forum Onslow, where we will meet the candidates for the North Carolina House of Representatives. District 14 is George Cleveland and Bobby Mills, and District 15 candidates Jim Morton and Philip Shepard. If you could not attend the Meet the Candidates Forum for Clerk of Court or the Onslow County Sheriff, just check the listings for G10 for the dates and times. Those will be broadcast throughout the month. And I understand you can also view the streaming video on jdnews.com. And lastly, remember, your vote does count. One-stop voting begins April 24th and will run through May 3rd, and Election Day is on May 6th. This concludes our forum. Thank you for joining us.
Good to see you one more time.
All right.
You're hired.